Should you homeschool your child? Of course, you happen to be consulting a YouTube video on homeschooling, so probably you're going to hear the answer, yes, of course, you should homeschool your kids. And having said that, you want to explore the pros and cons and the benefits and the disadvantages. So me, homeschool mom of 4 kids, age 21 down to 13, I can tell you, yeah, I think you should homeschool your kids. But I'm going to also give you straight talk because there's a whole bunch of things that you should consider if you want to do this homeschool lifestyle. There are many reasons that someone might be drawn to homeschooling. Tell me if you're on this list of possibilities. Your child is dealing with bullying issues at school. The school isn't addressing your child's needs. The school won't accommodate your family's travel plans or your family values. You have grades and traditional educational approaches that you see in the school that aren't reflected in what you think are valuable for your child's education. You don't like pandemic restrictions, or you want more pandemic restrictions. You want to spend more time with your kids, especially when they're little. And the school environment you're noticing isn't amenable to your specific child. You feel like your child probably could have a stronger academic education somewhere else. The idea of your child creating their own self-directed education sounds really cool to you. You don't like how your child is being influenced at school. And is there anything else on the list? I'll bet there is, and I would like to hear your specific reason. You should know that I actually offer life coaching to homeschool moms and to the homeschool curious, I call them, every Tuesday afternoon. You can find the link down below. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few ideas, the pros and cons of should you homeschool. One of the most compelling questions that I've heard in considering whether you should homeschool is, and I think this is a really good one, do you like spending time with your kids? One would always think that the answer to this was yes, of course, but this is not always the case. And the only person who can answer that honestly is you. Wanting to be with your kids will be highly necessary as you are about to spend a good chunk of time being with them. So just so you know though, you're not always spending time with the kids. Turns out you do a lot of other things. You are not just doing academic stuff, sitting in a schoolroom or at the kitchen table, even if you approach your homeschool very traditionally. Turns out you have other things to do, like household stuff and errands, which we come to affectionately call mini field trips, or groceries. I said groceries, there'll be more groceries. Also, you'll be volunteering maybe, or maybe you have a part or full-time job. You're not actually spending all your time with your kids, because then you start driving them places to hither and yon, as I say, or also to play dates and youth group and part-time jobs and soccer practice and piano lessons and voice class and theater productions, and the list goes on, because it turns out we homeschool families discover we have lots of time to do all that stuff. But when you're with them, and you're obviously signing up to be with them, do you want to be with them? So I'll let you think about that. You could write it also in your journal if you like. Something to explore in your journal. The second question is, even if you answer yes to that question, here's another compelling question. How do you interact with the frustrations that you have as a parent? Because girlfriend, if you don't know now, you are gonna find out. So if you do know and you don't like the answer, then you're going to feel that answer a whole lot more as a homeschool parent. All the time you have with your kids means you're going to be seeing yourself a whole lot more clearly. And sometimes it ain't looking so pretty. So now 2 thoughts from one homeschool mom to a potential other. I'm not trying to shame you, because I want you to feel free and confident and satisfied in your homeschool, and just like I wanted for me all these years. And shame never accomplishes anything. But it is a universal truth that all homeschool parents have to come to terms with their ugly side, the part of them that has to learn how to show up differently with their kids. And the second thought is from one homeschool mom to a potential other. You can do something about the ugly side. You see, there are those uncomfortable moments, and at times you're going to have to address your stuff, or as they say, do the work, but it's actually true. It's also a lovely opportunity to grow and to learn and to become who you were meant to be. And that's also true. So expect to deal with that stuff head on. That's why I'm here too. I've learned a few things and I love to share it with other homeschool moms who are dealing with their big emotions and their boundary challenges and their overwhelm and all that stuff. The third thing that I would share with you if you're considering homeschooling is you probably have heard that thought that, but you're not a teacher, or maybe you are. But if you're not a teacher, and what do you do with that? How do you respond to that? Or maybe it's valuable. And there's a whole bunch of other things that people will ask you about. Unless you are a teacher, because it seems to me I've met a lot of teachers, an awful lot of teachers that I've interviewed on my podcast. And here's a few: Colleen Kessler, and there was Allison Morrow, Christine Dixon, Mary Hannah Wilson. There's all sorts of different teachers that I've met, and I've learned from them. You don't have to be a teacher. In fact, sometimes it can get in the way of how you're engaging your child in your homeschool. So no, you don't need to try to be a school teacher or get your teaching degree, because you're not actually teaching a schoolroom full of anonymous kids. You're engaging your kids and facilitating an education for each of your kids. That is all. Take a deep breath. Just your kids, which will be enough. This is also why I don't like the word school in homeschool, because your home isn't a school. It's a home. And this is probably something that you definitely will learn by year 2, 3, 4, that your home is not a school. So think of yourself as a facilitator or a learning consultant, but not a teacher. A few tips when engaging your kids in your regular homeschool day. And I'll just quickly jump over these because I know that you're just considering, should I homeschool? But one is that siblings can help siblings in your homeschool. You'll see how that works in your specific home over the course of time, but I've seen it in mine many times. A couple of my kids went right through high school, homeschool, and they would help teach each other their math concepts or chemistry concepts. There was always a younger child, even way earlier in the homeschool days, when they would be interested in just sharing something just because they knew something and they wanted to show their younger sibling. So siblings can help siblings. Think outside the box. Think outside the workbook box or grades or testing. You actually don't need all that stuff. I'll just leave you to sit and think that for a little bit. But you don't have to have workbooks and grades and testing. Ooh. How about think outside school subjects? Whoa, might be taking you too far now, but just think in learning opportunities. How can we pursue learning opportunities? Do you like learning with your child now? Do you like doing things with them that they're specifically curious about, or maybe you're curious about? You can actually create a learning lifestyle based on the things you're interested in. I'm going to share a concept with you coming from the unschool movement that is called strewing. Strewing just means leaving stuff around so that your kids get interested in it. Surprisingly, it works. The sixth thing is to recognize learning opportunities and pursue them. So if you keep track of all the things that you do with your kids, you're going to discover that you are most definitely doing science activities. Or maybe they like writing stories, and ta-da, you're doing language arts. And then math concepts, turns out you do not have to know how to do algebra when your child is in kindergarten. So it's not something you need to consider right now. Those are just a few different ideas, but you're going to learn you can indeed teach your own. Really? Can you? You really can. I remember teaching a homeschool co-op class of 28 to 14-year-olds. We discussed Africa because not too many months previous, we'd visited Africa in rural Africa, my family and I. So I asked my teacher turned homeschool mom friend to teach me everything she knew about classroom management in 5 minutes, because that's all I had. She was a school teacher before her homeschool days, and I had 4 kids that I brought to the co-op because I was one of the homeschool moms too, and I had 5 minutes. She said classroom management skills weren't required because most of the kids were pretty astute and engaged. The only chattering that I heard was from my own girls. And with one fell swoop of their names spoken in the presence of their peers, they were magically quietened. Ta-da! So the second most common question I've been asked, and you might be wondering, is what about the S question? Socialization. What about socialization? Originally, I was told that teachers knew everything they needed to know to teach kids, and I didn't know everything there was to know about everything. P.S. I have since learned from teachers firsthand that they don't know everything either. In fact, I'll tell you that I learned basic arithmetic right alongside my oldest daughter because some of it I definitely did not grasp in elementary school. Yes, I said elementary school. Now that we've been homeschooling a few years, I've learned there are many things that I didn't learn in school. I just didn't realize I didn't learn them. And turns out I survived just fine without them. So my goal in my homeschool co-op class was to keep the kids' attention and discuss a topic in which they may or may not have had interest. One of the reasons for attending that class might have been that mom had decreed it, or dad. Or I had been interested in my own topic, of course, about Africa because I just traveled there. These kids might not have had any interest whatsoever. I might have been boring them silly and they didn't tell me. I didn't even have enough time in the group to get to know the kids to see if they cared. Teaching my own, though, that wasn't so difficult because even with my own kids, teaching my own takes some figuring and intentional observing, but I'm motivated. I care that they learn, that their interests grow. I care that their understanding grows or expands and that their ability to communicate blossoms. So I'm as intent as a mama with a preschooler, helping him sound out the letters of words or helping him potty train, also known as teaching, by the way. And if I don't know something, I find a book. I Google it. I YouTube it. I ask someone. Of course, there was an author that helped me feel at ease in this, and his name was John Holt. I've learned that knowledge is found at the tap of a finger. And in my Friday morning homeschool co-op class, I kept sharing my experiences and learning about Africa. I engaged them with questions, these homeschool co-op kids. I incorporated a few stories with photos and videos and things that I brought back, and lightened the topic with a few games. And at the end of the class, it'll be their moms that know their kids and help them to follow the rabbit trails or the curiosities of those kids, whether they're interested in learning more. But most assuredly, I can tell you that those moms are capable to teach their own. So, forethought. Maybe you're asking, what if I'm missing something? Straight up, you will. You will. You'll realize you've invested a whole lot of time on your firstborn's education. They'll be conjugating Latin verbs or learning violin at 5, or you'll learn that your youngest child then didn't learn his letter sounds until he was 6 because he got so preoccupied with the older kids' educations. But will you let me discuss this concept of gaps with you? Gaps suggest that something's missing. Someone forgot something. Maybe someone didn't catch all the details the first time or the second time. Or if you're thinking about the latest fashion trend with reasonable prices from a place called The Gap, that's not what I'm talking about. Straight up, I don't actually believe that there's an education out there that doesn't have gaps. I don't think it's a thing. There are no kids anywhere who make it through public school, private school, tutorship, Sudbury schools, Montessori schools, Waldorf schools, homeschools, even law school or medical school, or any school whatsoever without gaps. We all have gaps. That's why none of us is capable to write for every topic in Wikipedia, or why none of us is consulted for everything. And also that's why none of us who declare ourselves to be as knowledgeable as God. No, this is why all of us consult the Google bar or DuckDuckGo, whichever you prefer. We all, and I mean all of us, have gaps. I share a story about how I came to understand preventing educational gaps isn't a responsibility as a homeschool mom or as a teacher or as anybody, because we all have gaps. And you can check that out on my website, www.capturingthecharmedlife.com. The fifth thing I want to share with you is that you might wonder if you're able to find a perfect curriculum for your kids. And nope, you won't. You'll admire many, if you can afford all of them, but you'll discover as veteran homeschool mamas figure out everywhere that you might like it, a particular curriculum, but your kid doesn't like it. Or somebody, maybe you, spent a whole lot of money on curriculum and you don't like it. Or you liked it for a time, but then you discovered you didn't want to finish it. So I gave you 3 guidelines to choosing homeschool curriculum if you so choose to homeschool. Here's how you can find it. The same place everyone gets stuff: bookstores, online, the library, borrow it from friends. Or ask about your favorite homeschool curriculum on a Facebook page. This will garner oodles of opinions, and word of mouth is a powerful sales agent, so you'll definitely hear about the most popular stuff. What you like might not be what your friends like or what your kids like, or what just one of your kids like. Lots of experimenting is involved. You'll never get it figured perfectly. Even the most exciting curriculum, though, will probably be boring by the middle of November or the beginning of February. Those are typical times when people get kind of tired of homeschooling. And if you buy lots of curriculum, you'll feel like you have to use it. So my suggestion is don't buy it, just borrow it in the beginning. But be encouraged, because the perfect curriculum can't be found anyways. It doesn't exist. So if there's no magical curriculum, then how do you choose it? Well, if you're not locked into a prescribed program of learning dependent on your state or your province or wherever you are in the world, then I suggest 3 principles for choosing it. And I'll share more details, which you can find on my website, capturingthecharmedlife.com, under the post called Should I Homeschool? The 3 concepts are: follow their interests, follow your interests, and trust that the way they like to learn is the right way to learn. So I was primarily taught in a lecture, record what I was lectured, then study what I was lectured, then regurgitate it approach. How about you? So most of us were. Some of us were actually homeschooled, and some of us had different kinds of education. But most of us were taught like that. So those modes of learning have their place. Being told something, writing something on paper, reviewing it, and then being quizzed on it might have their place, but there's all sorts of different learning approaches and styles. And you will definitely learn what your child does best or how they like learning best. I have 2 videos on my website that have been impacts for me. One is from Barbara Oakley, who also has an incredible book about learning how to learn. And she gives insights into how we learn to learn. And Tessia Marshik believes that the notions of learning styles is a myth, which helps us to really embrace how our child learns, no matter whether it's auditory or verbal or sensory or whatever. So you can check those out on my website too. So remember, follow your child's interests, follow your interests, and learn how they learn. The sixth question that often people ask when they ask, should I homeschool, is it even legal? Which, I've been around for a while. So when I hear that, I go, yeah, of course, because they're your kids. They're not the government's kids. So yes, the answer is yes. However, the legal nomenclature or the wording or the expectations or requirements might be very different from state to state, province to province, or every country around the world. And I have found a list, a variety of different organizations on my website, all the states and provinces in Canada and the US. And if you are from a different country and you know what the website is that people consult in your area, I would love to hear that. Please send me a message. The seventh thing, now I alluded to this before and I'm going to go deeper here. What about socialization? Okay, I will resist the urge to roll my eyes at that. Why? Because I have been asked that question 1 bajillion times. And in a nutshell, I'll say this. I find it ironic that people ask me that question because my kids are so socialized. They're interacting with all sorts of different people and also across the age spectrum, and they are kind and they consider each other, and they're doing all the things that every other child does, except they do a lot more of them because they have more time to do them. But teaching kindness, I think, is the biggest element of socialization. What do you think? What do you think the value of socialization is? What's the value of that question anyway? So whether you are Muslim or Christian, Shambhala, Buddhist, or Hindu, most of us, minus an occasional psychopath, aspire to teach our kids to be kind to one another. And I think that is arguably the most important lesson in socialization. Teaching kindness in learning, or is learning to treat each other as we would have others treat ourselves. So be patient in the cafe lineup. Don't cut lines. Teach our kids to understand and listen to their siblings, even if they're frustrating them. Teach them how to speak kindly. Teach them how to argue respectfully. Teach them to listen and not interrupt. And then we do all that to our kids too. We teach them they should be listened to and that they have something to say. And I think that is the biggest reason that homeschool is actually a benefit to kids, is that they are socialized in a way that teaches them to be listened to and acknowledge that they have something to say. So I think this discussion about socialization really isn't usually about socialization. It's about social opportunities. Worry that kids aren't going to have social opportunities, when in fact, we simply have more time to attend social opportunities than schooled kids. Homeschooled kids attend youth groups and religious observances. They go to sports activities and art and music lessons. They attend birthday parties and Christmas socials, summer camps and family barbecues. They have visits at the lake with friends and vacations and trips around the world. And I would suggest all these things, obviously not in everybody's family. We don't all do those things, but those are all social opportunities. And our homeschool kids get plenty of them. In fact, they probably get more because they just simply have more time in the day to attend them. There is no magic sauce teaching kids socialization. Learning to be productive citizens of their society wherever they live, charitable, community-focused. We help to tailor an education that enables our kids to be who they were meant to become and contribute meaningfully in society. But know this, that by far the most difficult aspect of socialization is teaching our children, not by the words we use, the consequences we respond with when we're trying to teach them to do something different, or deciding how to help them to learn kindness, but rather recognizing that our actions, what we actually are really teaching them, is not taught by our words, but rather by the lessons, the attitudes, the approaches that are caught by our lives. This, I think, is socialization. on the website, when you check out capturingthecharmlife.com and you check that post, Should I Homeschool? You're actually going to see a section devoted to moms and dads who might want to homeschool, but also have a job. That's the eighth point that I share. So what are the benefits to homeschooling? 1, freedom. A whole lot of freedoms as homeschool families. We've got the freedom to choose our schedule, to decide our community, to teach our kids our values, to understand our kids, to connect with our kids, to choose an individualized education, to have a whole lot of fun with our kids, to create memories with our kids, to develop their interests and ours, and develop our kids' interests and encourage their passions. Maintain close connections with each of our kids, to get clearer on what we want in our families and in our lives. Freedom does come at a cost, though. The homeschool parenting experience, like I said earlier on, is saturated, both the really good and the really challenging aspects. You know, I don't have to tell you this if you're already a homeschooler, because you know this, but other than having to face your flaws continuously, or your character challenges, or you're doing your work and addressing them sometimes at lightning speeds, this homeschool lifestyle, it's loaded with freedom, baked in, sandwiched on both sides, permeated with the osmolality of water molecule dropped with a gentian violet. I'll let that soak in. You get the point. Homeschooling is saturated with freedom. The second thing is encouraging an individualized education. How amazing is that? There need be no saturation or standard education when there is no standard child to teach. Why is there a standard education? There is no average child. If our world was filled with individuals who fulfilled their internal and their unique purpose, what would our world be like? It wouldn't be as high-wired. It wouldn't be boastingly busy, unhappily exhausted, materialistically focused, a letter after your name striving, and treadmill-oriented. We'd all know each other more. We'd know each other more authentically. We wouldn't have to strive after meaning because we would intrinsically know we were born into it and meant to follow whatever we are or whoever we are. And it would manifest in the practical world. And I think we'd just all, of course, be happier. So my goal is to provide my particular child, or the 4 of them, with their varying penchants and aptitudes to have a personalized education. The third thing I tell you is that homeschooling is fun. It is really fun. This might have been my biggest learning curve in homeschool, is to learn how to let go and actually have fun. It took me years to learn how to have fun. I share 15 ways to incorporate fun into your homeschool on that same post. I've probably been motivated by these reasons, though. Kids get bored of routine, even when you're a homeschool family. I got bored of routine. Also, those fun Pinterest board activities, they actually needed someone to do something about them, to actually put them into practice. And because I've discovered that changing up routine actually increases the kids' interest or their comprehension, they retain things better when we change things up, then I learned to change things, and I learned to incorporate fun because it just worked. The fourth thing I'd share is that homeschooling gives you an education. Remember when I said about math, that you don't actually have to know how to do all the math when you start kindergarten with somebody? You don't need to have to know how to do high school math. No, you don't. And maybe you'll never learn it all because you use certain curriculums that don't require you to be involved, or maybe you hire a tutor, or you're really good at it, or you know somebody that's really good at it that can share with your child. But I can guarantee you, you're going to learn all sorts of things that you did not know you didn't know. It gives you an education. It's not just your kids that are gaining an education here. You'll learn a whole lot of things that you may have missed in your conventional education or had no interest until now. Here's a few things that I've learned. The relevance of the Pythagorean theorem as I helped build my goat barn with my son. How to do double-digit subtraction. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions. The grammatical parts of a sentence. Despite writing for years, I had no idea all the grammatical parts. What an article is, a or an. A piece of info I still don't think is really necessary, by the way. Phonetic rules, and why learning them as a homeschool mom makes it easier to engage my child in learning to read without teaching phonetic rules. I learned that Minecraft is educational. Why allowing my child to build a lap book on the Titanic is educational too. I encourage violin lessons way back when my oldest two were really little. And now I've learned as a homeschool mom that that is a form of self-torture. Every child is different. I've learned that every child is different. They don't learn the same. They don't listen the same. They don't always want to listen. They don't have similar interests. Sometimes working together as a family works for history or science, and sometimes it doesn't because some of them want to work together, some of them don't. Sometimes seasons of unschooling works, and sometimes there will be seasons of classical homeschool or Montessori, Waldorf, you name the approach, or no approach at all, or eclectic, because at a certain point, aren't we all eclectic? I've learned that my kids will learn things that I will never learn, and they'll be experts in our family. And they won't be teenagers when that happens. They'll be much earlier. I've learned that reading a wide variety of genres makes a widely thinking person. I'm going to tell you, girlfriend, that mama has the freedom to learn alongside her kids. We homeschool mamas get an education too. The fifth thing that I'll share is that it gives your kids an individualized education, setting them up for a life on purpose. So how does your child like to learn? What do you want them to learn? Do you want them to be independent thinkers? To coexist in the world harmoniously, kindly, responsibly? Find the things they enjoy doing that bring them purpose and bring them or their community's value? To find a way to make an income doing the things they enjoy? Not one box out there will fit my homeschool family or every child in my family. And that's why I know there is no box out there that will fit your child either. But that's not really our homeschool goal, is to get our kids to fit in boxes, not to find that comfy box, but to create an education and an atmosphere conducive toward their growth and expansion. So how do you do that? Well, there is no easy formula. There is no one size fits all, which makes this whole homeschool thing highly individualized. What gets in your way? Often, our preconceived notions about what we think we need in order to create that home education. That's why I was saying earlier that as a school teacher, you have a lot of preconceived ideas of what you think you should do in a home education. What else gets in our way? Our preconceived notions about what an education is anyway. And also others' preconceived notions about what an education is if we aren't putting into a specific room the ideas that other people have about our kids' home education or about all the things in our lives or in their lives. If we always consult what everybody else thinks, not a very peaceful place to live. So let's unpack all of that, what we think an education is anyway, and get clear on what we really think and determine how we want our homeschools to reflect our actual homeschooled kids. Last thing I'll share is that homeschooling gives our family a lifetime of family memories. So let's help our homeschool kids spend their time wisely so they have meaningful childhood memories and they learn to live their lives on purpose. Parenting is short-lived, and though it may not feel like it is right now for you, and I feel you, girlfriend, because I have been there, done that, thinking that first year of parenting was so slow because I wasn't getting any sleep. But it turns out they grow up. They all grow up, and you work yourself out of a job. So parenting is short-lived, and that's a statement that doesn't always feel true, but it is true. Time moves quickly. And after having a few children as I've had, and they all grow up, I've discovered, yep, they grew up. So invest your kids' time. Don't just spend it. What do you want them to learn? What do you want them to remember? Their childhood doesn't have to be reflected in the way that our culture approaches it, with semi-useful tidbits, semi-useful informational tidbits, then regurgitating those tidbits for standardized testing. We can enable our child to have an education way beyond that. We can teach our kids to live their lives on purpose, explore their interests, and find meaningful work now. So, do you want to homeschool? Should you homeschool? It gives you so much time to create a family dynamic that you want. Having said that, I don't mean that you can control the outcome of your family dynamic. It won't take you long to discover that you're actually not able to oversee your family like a strategic chess game. You can seriously influence the atmosphere. You can show up on purpose yourself in your life and for those you love. But you've got kids that are independent operators. They're, independent agents arriving in the world as separate personalities, and you don't determine and can't make them do or be something other than they really are. Having said that, you get to deeply influence the energy and atmosphere of your family. What you value, what you truly value, not just the things you say you value, will deeply be imparted to your kids, because more is caught than taught. If you value hard work, they will too. When you value hard play, they will too. If you value non-judgmental energy toward your neighbors, they will too. Notice that when you want to create a community of authentic, supportive connection, they'll feel supported by authentic, supportive connection too. If you value harmony and make others feel understood, you'll see that in them too. We get to create a family dynamic that deeply infuses our children's worlds. I think I would love to tell you that you should homeschool, but that is a decision all to yourselves. And whether you decide to homeschool, whether you decide not to homeschool, whatever your choice is, I wish for you the best. So, the last thing I'm going to share with you is that you get to live your life on purpose if you choose this homeschool route. There are so many benefits to this homeschool lifestyle. So much freedom, so much opportunity to become more you and encourage your kids to become more them. So why would you not homeschool your kids? So I'm going to say yes. Should you homeschool your kids? Of course, but you already knew I was going to say that. And whatever your choice. First, welcome to Homeschool if you are deciding to homeschool. And if not, you're always welcome to connect with me and chat more about it. I chat with other either homeschool moms or the homeschool curious on Tuesday afternoons. You can find the link down below and let's chat. And if you are going to homeschool after this video, then I definitely want to hear about it. So welcome to homeschooling.